Um, we get started. Call to order. Um, and look at your agenda. Nothing says pressure like being unprepared in a room full of individuals.
You wanna share it really quick, Steve?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Alrighty. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining those virtually and in the room. Really appreciate it. It seems most policy committee meetings like to meet virtually these days, but I thought given the content materials of today's agenda, that's important just to have some FaceTime when it comes to all things public works and transportation. So getting started, we got approval of last month meeting minutes. Rob, Amy, okay. Amy second?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. That's been approved. Moving on to, do we have any consent items?
None from staff today.
None from staff, all right. Councilmember Andrews or Wiles? You good? All right, general business. Let's get started with the road maintenance program update.
Sure. Can I take over for a second for the presentation?
Or is yours?
Thank you. Okay. So my name is Nicholas Johnson. I'm a engineer over with the Streets Capital Improvements Group. I'm in charge of advising on the roadway maintenance plan. Been in the city for 8 years, and for the past 3, this is now year 4, been doing an intense focus on roadway rehab. Just some city demographic information. The main thing I want to call your attention to on this slide would be the map there showing everything we've done with the city since the Build Up Aurora initiative included the streets group in 2023. Our current year work is shown in blue there on the map. And we have quite a bit going on. One of the things that I want people to be aware of as we go is we're also making a concerted effort for ADA ramp improvements this year. So if you kind of gotten used to our work rhythms in the past, things might move a little bit slower this year as we update all of those and make sure that the city is maneuverable for everybody. This is just showing how much the city has grown since 1986, when we started keeping really key records on this group's work, and showing, especially since about 2017, we've had some pretty significant growth in the overall size of the city network, which has led to some budget increases for this group that I'll highlight at the end of this presentation, just to show everyone kind of where we're operating from and how this is all being handled. I wanted to bring this one up because it shows 2 ways that we measure our roadway network. One is by length. So if you think, centerline miles, driving down a mile of Buckley and you have all those lanes beside you, it tells one story. But also if we look at how many square yards of road is across this network, it kind of shifts the percentage. We see a little higher arterial impact when we go by area versus by just length alone. If anyone wants a lot deeper discussion on why we choose these different measurement methods and how they can tell and inform how we make our selections for roadway, I am more than happy to do that. I can help many people with insomnia with roadway specifications. So how do we select and monitor the health of our roadway network? We use an index called the Pavement Condition Index. It gives every road a score from 0 to 100, with 100 being it's brand new and the sun hasn't even shined on it yet, and 0 being non-existent. We're driving through the mountains. I'll show some comparative pictures of what these scores mean so that you kind of get a handle on what we're talking about with these. But one of the things I do want to highlight is we do have third party come and verify the Pavement Condition Index. About every 3 to 5 years, they'll come through, drive the city, tell me what the whole health of the network is, and if my updates on the in-between years have been accurate. And then we use that, we get a score for every individual road that the city is responsible for maintaining in the network. And we will use that to form a hierarchy of, we need to do these roads at this time for the best impact from our taxpayer fees and everything. A little bit of pavement cross-section there for you. We usually run with the city, we have aggregate base course at the bottom on top of the soil. Then we do a mid-layer of larger rock pavement to give it some ballast and keep it durable. And then we have a top layer wearing course. And the most bang for our buck is if I can keep all of our maintenance in that top wearing course. If I have to start going below that, costs increase exponentially. So that's where a lot of my focus for this planning is making sure that I am targeting everything I can to keep it on that wearing course or doing like keeping the surface clean.
Of course.
Yes, absolutely.
So that PCI is how we're determining deferred maintenance.
Yes. Deferred maintenance and then also planned upcoming, 5-year look aheads.
So there's a 5-year plan on.
We're at the end of a 5-year cycle, so I'm actually building the next 5-year plan this year. Absolutely. So here are some pictures. Most of these roads have actually been worked on since these pictures were taken, but they provided a good baseline for when we say a PCI score, what that means. So 75, it looks almost new. It's it's not shiny black, but there's not a lot of cracks. There might be a crack seal on top to keep the pavement smooth and durable, but it's going to ride very nice. PCI of 70, you're going to start seeing some hairline cracks throughout, all normal wear and tear. Again, you're not really going to feel that in your vehicle too much, but you will see a difference in the road if you go from a PCI of 75 or greater, and all of a sudden you're driving along a PCI of 70, you'll see, oh, it doesn't look quite as nice and new. It's as we start getting into the PCI of 60 and below, where you're going to start having some issues. This is where our streets department gets a lot of phone calls from concerned residents. Hey, there's a pothole, something was drawing my vehicle, some of the cracks are getting large. And you'll definitely start to feel it at a PCI of 50. You'll start seeing, larger patching. You'll probably, if you're in something like a minivan, you'll feel that bump in the back seat a lot more. And we really don't want to see our roads go below 50 if we can help it. There are some that are just because the nature of managing such a large network, but we work very hard to keep our score above that 60 level. This is life cycle, so just kind of show you, inform you how I make decisions on things and how I advise Mark and Kurt and others. When you're looking at a brand new road, you'll notice that it has a steep drop in those first 5 years, where it goes down by about 15 points. So you start at 100, within 5 years, you're already down at 85. That's just the nature of the winter, road salts, standard traffic going across it with some of the 18-wheelers and whatnot. And then there's a nice long plateau for the next 10 years, where the road doesn't change a whole lot. Most of what changes are things like, some of those aesthetic cracks, maybe one pothole that you can go in, and if you catch it, you can repair it and keep the road condition in a good spot for everybody. And that's where we like to keep all of our maintenance efforts if possible. And that's whenever you hear anyone talking in road maintenance, that falls under the category of preventative maintenance. Once we get to where it does that second drop off, that's rehabilitation methods. And those are things where you'll see like the mill and overlay, where you take that top wearing course off and just replace it and put yourself back up in that large plateau up there. Now, once you get down to where it starts to really bottom out after rehabilitation, you're looking at full roadway reconstruction. It's gone on long enough that either the road has been pulverized and is difficult to maintain, or we might have some subgrade issues that are eating away at the bottom of the road, and we need to go in and take care of that. And that is where the cost really goes up. We do everything we can to stay out of that. Every network has some that gets down to that level, but we've made significant strides in the past couple of years keep ourselves up into that main plateau with the bulk of our network. When we do a mill and overlay, you kind of see that secondary line that comes up. It just resets that timeline for a little bit. You're not going to do a mill and overlay and get it back to a PCI of 100, but you might get it back to about that 85 and buy yourself some time with that. And that's really kind of going in that cycle where you bump it back to 85 every once in a while. That's really where you get into your longevity with your pavement. Couple of points that I want to call out here. 2022, we started noticing that we were on the tail of that curve. That's about the time that a lot of talks were happening with council. We were setting up the groundwork for the Transportation Maintenance Fund. And when Build Up Aurora was starting to have a streets focus for a portion of its allotment. When we did a roadway assessment in 2009, we found that we were still kind of in that plateau. Things were going well. In 2019, we noticed that we were dropping way off that curve, which is what led to those conversations with the Transportation Maintenance Fund, certificates of participation in 2022, because we saw the writing on the wall that it was time to get our whole network average back up. Right now, because of all of the efforts, you can see that 2025 kind of up there resetting that curve. We have taken ourselves from a PCI of 69, which is rough. We were getting calls constantly from concerned residents about the quality of the roads in their neighborhoods. And we have taken the entire network average up to a 79, which is ridiculous. I'm going to put that on my resume every that I was a
But you're
part
not
of
going
the
anywhere,
effort.
right?
Yeah, wait a minute.
I'm not going anywhere. I do have annual evaluation.
Next slide, Nicholas.
So this shows kind of the past few years of how the PCI has changed, where you can see, 77 and 09, which is where we like to stay. Then we had that steep drop in 22 and building ourselves back up over the last couple of years. And that map that's on there, that is showing our history since 2007 of roadway intervention efforts. All kinds of working each year. We do have a version of this online where I can go through and filter by each year so you can kind of see the age of when the last time you were in a neighborhood. I use that a lot of times with citizen requests to make sure that everyone knows when we were last there and what they can expect for ballparks on maintenance efforts. This is just going over those pavement maintenance strategies. I've discussed a lot of these already, but just to kind of show you the hierarchy, crack fill is easy. Crack fill doesn't cost a lot per mile to do. And it buys us some decent life in that top plateau of the curve. Surface treatment is the slurry seals. It's where we're not adding to the surface of the road, but we are putting down a new, not a full wearing layer. We're just rehabilitating that wearing layer so that we can get about 5 to 10 more years of life out of it.
That's so cool.
Yep, seal coat, sir. And then we move into the overlays and remove and replace options. This is a graph showing relative costs for each method. Some of them we don't use. We don't do rejuvenator in the city. We've tried it sometimes, and we don't do thin lift overlays. But we wanted to show this data from state averages, just to give you guys an idea of as we go further down that line, how much more does it take to get a road back up. So as you can see, crack seal, the more I can stay in crack seal and slurry seal, the more miles I can do each year. And if we get into reconstruction, that starts really eating at the budgeted allotment for my group. So we prioritize based on PCI. I develop recommendations, they're reviewed, and then we implement the program with the goal of finding the best strategy, whether it's the seal coat, the crack seal, or mill and overlay or grader at the right time. Hopefully intervening with mill and overlay and everything to keep everything away from the reconstruction as much as possible. And then I build the best recommendation I can, and then we look at the budget and adjust everything so that we're getting the most impact for the allotted amount that we have. A little bit of program history. In 2015, when the network was quite a bit smaller, we were able to balance pretty well between neighborhoods and arterials. Starting in 2016, we had to make some adjustments. I say we, this was some of my predecessors that I was informed of this process. But we had to make some hard decisions about how we spend limited funds for a growing network. And the decision came back to hold with our arterials and our collectors, because that's our main routes for emergency and commerce coming through the city, to keep those up to at least a 72 PCI. And then we would handle local roads and keep them safe and passable, but we knew we were going to lose a little bit on their PCI because we just weren't able to invest as much in them while keeping our arterial collector network where it needed to be. So in 2023, we were able to proceed with a project that was approved in 22 for the certificates of participation. It was a large influx of funding to get the PCI score back up, get our roadway network back where it needed to be so that we weren't constantly buried under maintenance needs, and we're able to actually improve things for everybody. With that, we also went from, I believe it was just part of the general budget to the dedicated transportation maintenance fund. So all of the funding that goes to this group is easily visible by everyone during the budgeting process. It's called out. This year, I believe we have 32 million, a little over, that's allocated for this work. And it's set to grow, I believe, at 5% every year so that we can stay ahead of inflation and maintain as close to a similar project size as we can. Our target back when we had that PCI of 69 and we were all doing everything we could to make sure that we got our network out of that spot, we were given a network target of 73 for our pavement condition index. We have worked very hard over the past few years and have actually gone past that to the 79. I was very, very pleased with that third-party assessment that came through last year, and showed that not only was I meeting council's targets, but was exceeding. Project year comparisons. So in 2023, when we started with the certificates of participation and the transportation maintenance fund, this is how much work we have done for mill and overlay for the program, which is where most of the funding is taken up, is that mill and overlay work. We did 271 lane miles in 23, and we're reaching closer to a steady state this year of about 160 lane miles per year. And I don't think I defined it earlier, the difference between a lane mile and a center line mile. A center line mile is you drive down Buckley, you drove a mile, and it's the same mile as if you were to drive down, say, Vaughan Way. When you do lane miles, yes, sir.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
How do we, if we're gonna make that comparison, how do we measure the impact of the number of vehicles that?
Right. So, yeah, we do have design standards that the city engineers put together for how thick each road needs to be to survive the traffic that's anticipated. And so, you know, a place like, you know, say Vaughan Way is going to have like 6 inches of asphalt over maybe 6 to 8 inches of aggregate base, whereas someplace like Buckley or Alameda, you're looking at closer to 9 inches of asphalt over you know, 1 foot to 2 foot of aggregate base so that it can support that traffic.
How do we, so I live in Ward 2.
Yeah.
There's a lot of places in Ward 2 that are industrial.
Yes.
How do we measure the impact on the roads, those places?
Yeah. So a lot of those come with traffic studies when the roads are being designed. Now, I maintain what's existing, so I'm not really building that up, but we do have traffic studies that go through and check when roads are undergoing design or upgrade. And we actually have separated industrial roadway standards above and beyond our arterial standards. So, and if you have further questions on that, sir, please come grab me. I'm more than happy to go through those specs and show you how those differ.
That'd be great. We've been kicking around some things.
Okay, sir. Yeah.
Well, and to that point, for Ward 2, I mean, Amy's talked, Amy will have stories for days about the one two one-way or two-way, very small, tiny
Mhm.
roads, with a lot of people trying to get out and in. Are those roads up to, compliance with
So those roads were
residential?
annexed
Okay.
and we're having to work on those as we can, sometimes with developer and the industrial group that's going to go in there, they'll have to provide some agreements with the city on assisting with the upgrades to the roads.
So annexation is different.
Then brand new build, yes.
Mhm.
So that's,
And I can only talk a little bit about that when we have.
that's quite interesting, yeah.
Do you know, so for a new neighborhood, for example, once the neighborhood is done, are there any requirements, and this may not be your area, but are there any requirements for the developer to sort of level up the roads to a good standard? Like, for example, in my neighborhood, Third.
Mhm.
Third is horrific. Well, that was the main route that all the construction vehicles came in and out, so they paved it. Then for 2 or 3 years, heavy construction vehicles every day. And then the developer left because that's what they do. And we're with a road that probably, well, it's a bad road, but probably the wear and tear was magnified based on the developer's heavy, trucks coming in and out
Yeah.
constantly for years and years. So do we have any requirements for them to leave it in good condition or put a top seal or anything, or do we just accept?
I would need to check with some
I-
colleagues.
Laura,
I
I,
think
go ahead.
it's inspection, so we do inspect after they construct, but once the road is in service. Beyond that, I can get some more detailed information for you around what the requirements are. I think.
pretty sure we don't require pavement maintenance in general though. And there's certain uses, like I know for oil and gas, sometimes there's different fees that we charge.
Yeah.
When we know like for oil and gas, they might be trucking a lot of water and heavy vehicles along a specific route. And so in those cases, I think there's a different fee structure, but
That's correct.
just in general, I don't think we have the ability to charge for that. And
Yeah, just
didn't
trying to think of
also-
ways to get some money in,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And better roads, like,
Appreciate
hey,
that.
Oakwood, you left a crappy road.
Yeah.
Maybe you should give us some money to fix it,
Yeah.
for example. you
Yeah.
know, Whoever, you know.
And I know
Mayor
we
Pro
can't talk
Tem?
about
Oh.
annexations. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I know we can't talk about annexations much, but how do we partner with neighboring cities that border with the roads? For example, Piccadilly and 56 is a big problem. How do we partner with Denver County or Denver City County in order to fix that road?
So you
How would we partner?
yeah, we would look at probably an IGA with that group. And what does shared maintenance look like that's fair for both entities?
Some roads we already have IGAs, like for
Yes.
Piccadilly, that's part of the IGA we already have with Denver.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
for some we
56,
don't,
I
and I think, yeah, which one?
56.
I think those are all in the same IGA. There's like a table in it I can picture, but I have to, yeah. Yeah, Piccadilly, yeah.
But my question was back to the previous discussion with respect to kind of the building of new roads. So is it correct that the roads are dedicated to the city at 20 years by the metro districts typically? For
No, I-
maintenance?
Depends.
Yeah, it depends, and I think for developments, if they're building improvements along their frontage or a new road, it's turned over to us after initial acceptance of the project, so that's normally relatively early on, like when they get their TCO or their temporary certificate of occupancy or their CO, then they typically turn the road over to us at that point. But then there's some developments where some of the roads stay private and they're never turned over to us.
So we're maintaining them actually now from day one. I think when I first got onto council, it was after 20 years, they turned it over.
For
to us.
metro
it-
districts,
It depends on the agreement that's there, because
yeah,
we do sometimes allow them to keep a road private and then upgrade it to a city road, but they have to make proof that it meets all city requirements before we'll take it on. We won't take a substandard road like that. It will stay private if they can't prove that it meets all current city requirements. And that becomes a road by road discussion, unfortunately.
But for all of the building that they do, we become immediately responsible as soon as there's occupancy
pretty quickly, yeah, I would say.
Yeah.
for the maintenance costs.
Yep.
So going back to the presentation, if we start,
Yes.
you were talking about the difference between lane miles or.
Center line miles and
Yep.
lane miles?
Yes, thank you.
Yep. Center line mile is if you drove 1 mile of Buckley. Lane miles are, it would be about 5 of those if you drove Buckley because you have 5 lanes to traverse. I use lane miles a lot in my discussions because I feel like it's a clear impact of how much is being done. Especially as we talk about blending, the arterial collector and residential responsibilities. If I just use center line miles, I feel like things would be skewed a little bit as far as actual percentages applied. Okay. Our budget for this year is about 32 million and a quarter that we'll be using for the street overlay. That includes the concrete repair, some of the in-house street maintenance that goes on, as well as the slurry seal and inspections that we have a third party come through and watch these contractors on with us. With that, that's everything I had for this policy committee. Any other questions? I'm more than happy to entertain.
No, we were a little out of order with asking questions during the presentation. And I didn't see you there, Councilmember Hancock, so want to turn it over if you have any questions you'd like to ask or comments. Sure.
I do not have any questions at this time.
All right, sounds good. Anyone else, council members? Any follow-up questions?
Stop sharing.
All right, so to the question, does the committee support this going forward?
Yep.
Second, alrighty, unanimously passed. All right, thank you. Next up, we have 4B, resolution for the first amendment to IGA with CDOT for Aurora multimodal access improvements, phase 2.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Valencia. I'm the Transportation Project Delivery Manager in Public Works. Nice to meet everyone. Today I'm presenting an IGA amendment with CDOT and the City of Aurora for the Aurora Multimodal Access Improvements Project. So we're also calling this our phase 2 missing sidewalk. We received 2 grants from DRCOG for the first phase 1 project had about 6 locations in the city for missing sidewalk, and that one is currently getting ready to start construction. This one is, well, it was 3 locations in the city, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in further slides. The projects will fill sidewalk gaps, widen substandard sidewalk, and improve multimodal access with new curb ramps. As I mentioned, these were both federally funded projects, and then the City of Aurora provided a local match. So the phase 2 missing sidewalk, also known as Havana Missing Sidewalk Project, had 3 locations, 2 on Havana and then 1 on Yale. And the Yale segment is being removed as part of this IGA amendment, which I'll talk a little bit more about in further slides. So these maps just kind of show the project locations. So on the right side of your screen are the 2 locations of the Havana project. From Montview to 13th is the northern segment, and then along 4th, from 4th to 1st is the second segment for missing sidewalk on Havana. And then the segment that is being removed is along Yale from Peoria to Xanadu. So when this project first began, we had our typical public outreach with the local residents. We had our first public meeting in the Martin Luther King Jr. Library on October 22nd of 2024. And we received pretty positive feedback at that meeting. There weren't really any concerns that I'm aware of. I was at that one. We had another meeting in December 9th of 2024 at the Dam East HOA. And that's when we really started to hear concerns from the residents, specifically of the Dam East HOA, which is adjacent to the project site, just south. So there was a lot of communication with those residents on how can we make this project better. They basically were very concerned about trees that needed to be removed along outside of their fences, but in the public right of way, but still part of, could still impact their home values and whatnot. So we met quite a bit with them, tried to come up with a solution. It's kind of hard to see in the bottom right corner of that graphic, but we sent out a postcard showing what that new sidewalk would look like and how we were going to try to save the trees. But we still didn't get a lot of good feedback on this segment of the project. So we sent out a survey in June and July of 2025 that was sent to these localized residents, and the map on the left kind of shows you that section that we sent the postcards to. 72% of respondents did not support construction of the Yale sidewalk from Peoria to Xanadu. And just to note that 75% of those respondents did live in the Dam East neighborhood. So it was popular amongst the greater surrounding area, but not those residents. While all this was happening, we just so happened to get a DRCOG request, which is the people that were providing the grant to the project. And this was just a local agency-wide request that there was going to be a $10 million federal funding reduction. And DRCOG was basically asking local agencies to voluntarily cancel projects, take a reduction in federal funding, or willingly increase your local match. And so the timing kind of worked out for us, oddly enough, to say, well, we have this segment of sidewalk that is not very popular with local residents. And so we talked with upper management and came to the conclusion that it would benefit DRCOG and the city to just voluntarily return the funds that were meant to be for the Yale segment. So this is what this IGA amendment is all about. We worked closely with DRCOG and CDOT to revise our scope to just include the Havana segments and remove the Yale segment. As part of that, we will be returning almost $1 million of multimodal federal grant, and then our local match of $308,000 will be returned back to our local match funds at the city that we can use on other projects. So the request to TAPS today is, do you approve the resolution and intergovernmental agreement amendment between CDOT and the city of Aurora to move forward to the next available study session? Happy to answer any questions about the project.
Thank you, Kathy. Any questions?
Was there any clarity on what about the project was not supported by the community once the trees were saved?
Another thing that they were worried about was because it was on the northern end of the fence line, it would be full of ice and a maintenance problem through the winter. So that was one thing they looked at. They also trash, another problem. They were worried that residents walking along the sidewalk would be throwing trash into their yards. I think those are the two big ones. And then they didn't think that a lot of people would use the sidewalk and it was a waste of taxpayer money.
Yes, I am very familiar with this project. As you well know, Kathy, we had lots of discussions with the neighborhood. They did not want this project. They were very unhappy with it for the reasons that you have already mentioned. And I thought this, at the end of the day, was a great win for this neighborhood because at the end of we work for them and they work for us, we work for them and their needs should be paramount. They were very pleased with the outcome, and I frequently drive that stretch of road and it's not highly used. And so to be able to give that money back to DRCOG without penalty was a really good solution for them and for us.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no further questions or comments, does TAPS approve the resolution? All right, and it passes, it moves forward. Thank you. Of course. All right, moving on to updates around the BRT, the Bus Rapid Transit.
That is me. Let me try to share screen. Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to present, Chair Horton and members of the committee. My name is Carly Campuzano. I'm the Deputy Director of Transportation and Mobility in the Public Works Department. And this item is an informational update on the East Colfax Bus Rapid Transit Project. All right, so here's an agenda with what I plan to cover. First, I'll go over the project background to give you more info on that. I'll go over general bus rapid transit or BRT information. I'll give project updates on the overall project and then recent updates on the Aurora segment. And then I'll go over our communications plan and small business support plan and then next steps. So as far as background, this is an exhibit that you have maybe seen before if you've attended other public meetings or heard about the project. The East Colfax BRT project starts in downtown Denver near Union Station. And then it goes through Denver along Colfax into Aurora and then ends at I-225. So there are 3 distinct segments. The yellow section downtown forms a loop. And that section is going to be in the existing bus only lanes in the downtown area in that yellow segment. And then in the blue segment, that is the 5.5 mile section through Denver. That section will be, the BRT will be center running with dedicated lanes. So in the middle of the road. If you've driven the area recently, you'll have seen a lot of construction. So there's a lot of stations up now. Okay, I'm seeing a nod, so you've seen it. That is under construction right now and is center running through Denver for over half of the total BRT length. And then in the orange section in Aurora, the BRT transitions to being side running again and is side running mixed flow with traffic through the Aurora section to I-225. So those are the 3 main segments. This is a regional project. It involves us here at Aurora. It heavily involves Denver and RTD as well. And CDOT is involved also since Colfax is a state highway. So this is just a bit more about some of the history of this project. The history goes beyond 2012, but just going back to 2012, that at that point there was a kickoff meeting and some scoping to move this regional project forward. Through the years, there have been alternative analyses that have looked at different types of transit improvements aside from BRT. Eventually, BRT was selected as the preferred alternative, and then that developed into a center running recommendation through the Denver segment in 2017. And I would say that there's been a lot of heavy work on this project from 2020 to now. The project is funded primarily by a federal grant from the FTA, the Federal Transit Administration. And so through the development of that grant and process, there's been a lot of clearances, studies, documentation, and design from 2020 to 2024. And then the project broke ground for construction in October 2024. And so construction has been ongoing, bus acquisition is ongoing, and then testing will be coming up as well. This is just a little graphic about explaining what some of the BRT features are. So BRT includes elements like shelters, protection from the weather, signage related to the route and related to branding, different off-board fare collection so that just to speed up the bus operation so that people aren't having to pay when they get on. Generally, BRT includes dedicated lanes along the majority of the line, specialized vehicles, articulated buses that are a bit longer, and then other improvements such as level boarding and transit signal priority. So the best way I've heard BRT described is it's supposed to be kind of light rail on wheels. So it's supposed to function and feel more like light rail and have different amenities, but still be operated through buses, which makes it a lot less expensive. So that's just a summary of overall BRT. To be considered BRT by the FTA, there are a certain amount of minimum requirements that need to be included. So elements such as shelters and weather protection are required. lit maps and schedule displays are required, and then branding. So those are some of just the minimum features. So in Aurora, as the project was moving forward, we at the staff level looked at kind of a menu of options for what enhancements we could include beyond the minimum that's required for BRT. Each element that's beyond the minimum as an enhancement comes with an additional cost. And so we looked at that, evaluated what would be the best elements to include, and brought forward a recommendation to council in 2022, which was then approved, and we moved forward into design. So at Aurora, in the Aurora section, we will have signature stations more aesthetically similar to Denver's at Havana. So there were two there on one on each side of the road. We will have ticket vending machines, variable message signs with real-time schedule displays, safety features like emergency phones, security, and lighting at the stations. And then we're also providing level boarding at key locations. So for level boarding, the curb will actually be removed and redesigned to be higher up so that if someone with a mobility issue or mobility device boards, the bus won't have to kneel down for them, which can make it a little easier to operate and save some time. So those are the main enhancements. Questions we get frequently are what are the differences between Denver and Aurora, and what will the BRT look like in Aurora? So on the left side of the screen are some graphics showing what the BRT will look like in Denver. And if you've driven the area recently, you've maybe seen some of this mid-construction as well. So you see the dedicated lanes, the through lanes will be down to one in each direction, and the platforms will be in the middle of the roadway. And some of those, like I said, have already been constructed. In the Aurora section, the rendering on the right shows what it will look like at Colfax and Havana. It's a similar aesthetic station, but the BRT will be on the side of the road, mixed flow with traffic, and there will be two through lanes of vehicle traffic maintained in Aurora. So going into some of the details about construction timeline, this is just a snapshot of a dashboard from the project website. This is updated real time very frequently. So if you ever want to reference this, you can look and see some updates. As far as schedule, the project is divided into 5 segments. The 5th segment is the Aurora segment. And the contractor has been working, started in downtown and has been working west to east. So the project will come into Aurora for construction in the spring. We think right now, April. We don't have an exact date yet, but I'll be sure to update you all when we have a more solid date for when that'll begin in Aurora. And lots of other metrics are on the website as well. So then Aurora specific updates. In Aurora, we are preparing pretty heavily for that construction to start. We have been working on easement acquisition from any property owners that we need easements from. They've all been contacted and we're finalizing those. We have been working on a communications plan that we're implementing. We have also drafted a small business support plan that we are initiating very soon. And then recently there was art selected for the 2 station canopies for the Havana station. So that's in the area that I've boxed in a red box up there is where the art will be from local artists, which is exciting as well. So the communications plan, just a little bit more details. A communications plan was developed that includes these items. So we have a dedicated outreach team for construction, which I want to highlight. They are talking to folks along the corridor before construction gets there, which has been valuable, especially in the Denver section where that's already going on. Very frequent updates are being provided on the website. There's also an email subscribe list that people can subscribe to. Flyers and construction notices are being distributed and updated and given to small businesses and businesses overall. What else? I'll talk a little bit more on the We Back the Facts campaign on the next slide, but there's also pop-up events along the corridor, which have been very popular and very successful. There are like pub crawls monthly organized to help support businesses and let people know that businesses are still open. There's also monthly chats on Colfax meetings where the contractor is available to answer any questions from small businesses. And those have been really well received as well. The contractor has their own PI team who's very engaged, and they're very proactive about talking to folks that have questions. We had a recent Aurora focused public meeting, which we also had a pretty good turnout. And Councilmember Horton, thank you for coming. I thought that was great and appreciate your support. And then we also have a construction fact sheet that's more focused on Aurora that we can hand out to people as well. So the We Back the Facts campaign, this is a social media campaign. It's been going on in Denver and will continue into Aurora as well. And so folks are encouraged to visit Colfax businesses, snap a photo or video, tag it on social media just to help spread the word and let people know about some of the cool businesses and places along Colfax. And then selected winners get Colfax Cash gift cards that they can use along the corridor. And so that has been a really great social media campaign as well. And then specifically about small businesses, we know that there is a lot of concern from business owners really whenever there's construction, but especially on a project like this. And so we have been working with our Aurora SBDC, our Small Business Development Center, to prepare a small business support package. And so one thing we started with was we reviewed the whole corridor, screened for small businesses, tried to see who would maybe be most impacted or more impacted by construction. And we've put together a support package of an assistance that they'll receive. And so soon we will be distributing letters, introducing the program, telling folks about resources, how to apply, and some additional details. So some of the resources could include financial assistance, different walkthroughs with an assessment for green infrastructure, for water efficiency, security. We offer help if they need help building their website or help with marketing or social media and those types of things. And I will also say that if we have already reached out to really directly impacted businesses to get easements from them, if we need to use part of their area temporarily for construction. And so those agreements are also negotiated separately and they're compensated for any area that we need to access temporarily for construction. So that's most of what I had. For next steps, we are going to be distributing letters to those small businesses. We are finishing up our easement acquisitions to prepare for construction, and then construction will start this spring. Construction is expected to last about a year through 2027. It won't be fully impactful the whole time, but the contractor will be moving around probably from station to station and working on different things. Communications efforts are ongoing, and then BRT services will start by early 2028. And this was really just informational, but my only question is if you would all support me presenting this similar presentation to City Council for information at the next available study session. And I'm happy to answer questions as well.
Dang, Carly. Sorry. Vocals are not that great. Appreciate it. Questions, comments from Councilmember Andrews, Wiles first, and then pass over to Coombs and Hancock.
Thank you.
I guess my only question about the businesses, so just to clarify in my own mind, we went to the actual small businesses and not like the owners of the
Yes.
overarching building. Okay.
Yes.
Just because I know in some other meetings I attended in Ward 1, I heard kind of grumblings, not about this project, but others where they felt like the building owner got some attention, but not necessarily the business owner who are in the building at that.
Yeah, that
Just
makes
to clarify.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
So for the small business support will be whoever owns the small business, and the SBDC has info on that. But to your point, the easements have to go through the registered property owner, so those are sometimes different. But yeah, this will be for the businesses. Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Coombs or Councilmember Hancock?
Yes, so I just had a couple of questions about the specific details. With respect to the mixed flow, how does that impact the speed of the bus compared to dedicated lane BRT?
The mixed flow definitely will not be as fast as the dedicated lane BRT. We are looking at adding transit signal priority to the project, where it's a change we can make with our signal, where if the bus approaches at a certain time, they could get an early green or an extended green to help speed them up. It definitely won't be as fast through Aurora, but the other thing is in Aurora, our density of bus stops is more frequent. So I think even if we had dedicated lanes, it would be a little slower in Aurora, just because I think our spacing in Aurora, you probably know this feeling, but it's about a third mile.
Something like that, yes.
And Denver's are a little less frequent. So it'll be faster through Denver, but overall it should still be 10 to 15% faster overall, and the bus headways will be every 4 minutes, which I think will help a lot as well. Yeah.
Councilmember Hancock?
Nothing.
A few questions. First around ADA accessibility, particularly for those who are visually impaired. Are there mechanisms that are being designed into the infrastructure to navigate for folks to navigate who may have that physical disability?
Yes, that's a good question. I know there are going to be like the tactile strips for visually impaired folks to note where they're entering the roadway, kind of like a curb ramp.
Yeah.
And there's some different markings. I'm not sure about what other audible indications RTD might have on their side, honestly. We can look into that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll
Take
get
care.
back to you. We'll
yes,
start
yeah,
to
we'll
get
reach
info.
out, because
Yeah.
RTD will own some of that equipment, and I know that they have their own ADA standards, so I can follow up with them and get you
Thank you.
info, yeah.
And then in terms of design, so I had a great meeting with Kim around marketing and, we're world in a city. Is there an opportunity to include, that branding on the Aurora side, whether it's a wrap around the poles or something just to, when people know when they're coming into Aurora, they're coming into Aurora.
Oh.
Denver's Denver, we are here. I just have some of that city pride.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can look into that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's been top of mind is we want a great experience coming into Aurora and anything to market as a signature, experience. We want to do that. So we'll follow with communications on that. And great.
And then two more, going back to the photo, around the way it's structured in Aurora. So we're not having 2 lanes, it's 1 lane, right?
There's 2 lanes of traffic still
Yeah.
in each direction. In some areas, it depends on the stop. In some areas, there's space for like a bus pullout, and some they're kind of more blocking a travel lane. But we have on-street parking through a lot of our area in Aurora, so you'll basically have 2 travel lanes, and then the bus is typically in their like pullout space, kind of similar to where they are now.
Okay, and so the bus going east will turn around and use the same lane going west.
Yeah, turn around. It'll use the other side of the road.
It would
So it's,
use-
there's
oh,
one
so
on
it's
each.
both
I'm so
sides?
sorry.
Oh,
Yeah,
got
there's
it. Okay,
it's
okay.
both sides of the road.
Got it.
Yes, I'll go back to the graphic. And the graphic, I only showed one
I must
side.
have missed that.
No,
Okay.
yeah, and you can
Oh, I see it over
in the
there on
distance. Yeah,
Okay. All right, I was very confused.
it's hard to
a second.
see.
All right, great.
Yeah,
All
so
right.
very more similar
Appreciate
to
the
in
clarity.
function to how it is today. So at Havana, when we have we have 2 signature stations, even though it's kind of one stop on the
Mhm.
BRT since it's on both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And then will there be like a breaking ground ceremony for April or?
We should have one. We've talked about that
Yeah.
a bit. I think we need to nail down a date, and
Yeah.
yes, we can
Yeah,
definitely do
that'd be
that.
really
Yes,
cool.
there will
All
be.
right.
Yeah.
Great, all right.
Just wants a shovel with a bow on it.
I think we all do.
Yeah. What was 2012 is the year the conversations? Is that, yeah. So well deserved at this point. All right, any other questions or comments? All right, will we like to see this updated presentation given at a study session?
Sure.
Yep, all right.
Thank
then
you.
Get that scheduled, yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Alrighty, okay, so moving on to connecting Aurora.
Okay,
Okay.
introduce Chair Horton, member of the committee. Good afternoon. And my name is Hui Liang. I'm a principal transportation planner with planning department. I'm also the co-project manager together with Carly on connecting Aurora, the city's multimodal transportation master plan. We started this project in September of 2023, so almost 2.5 years ago. We made regular updates to this committee throughout the project. But before our adoption plan for April, March timeframe, because we have new members for this committee, so we'd like to first provide an overview for the project from the beginning to the what we have now. We already have the developed draft final report and the recommended projects, programs, and the policies, all those have been done. And we will finish our last public engagement. It will close tomorrow, actually. We shared our final report online as well as in libraries with hard copies. So we're ready to go to the council for adoption in March and April. But so with that, we're going to provide an overview of the project, and I'm going to turn over to Keith, the consulting project manager for this project.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hui Liang. Excuse me. My name is Keith Borsheim. I'm with HDR. We are the lead consultant on the Connecting Aurora Transportation Master Plan. Really happy to see all the new faces on the TAPS committee, and of course, Councilmember Hancock. I was going to offer, maybe you just give this presentation since you've seen most of it several times. But since I'm here, I'll go ahead. So here we go. Our agenda for this presentation includes going over the project's purpose and goals. We will touch on public engagement results through each phase of the project as well. We'll have a brief presentation of the proposed policies, programs, and projects. And then, as Hui Liang mentioned, go over the final plan adoption timeline. So this is the city's first opportunity to create an overall citywide multimodal transportation master plan. The city has done transportation planning throughout its history, but never has had this great opportunity and the funding to bring it all together into a holistic vision for the entire city. So we're really happy to support that. This plan is in support of Aurora Places and will align and support the goals of Aurora Places and is intended to be an amendment to that comprehensive master plan. Key goals for the project overall are to be innovative and adapt to a changing transportation landscape. One of the recommendations of this plan is to update this plan every 5 years because that changing transportation landscape is changing so rapidly as technology evolves. It will establish an integrated transportation and land use approach. So building on the great work that Aurora Places and that foundation that Aurora Places laid, and to create a multimodal system of complete streets for all people. So complete streets means that no matter how anybody moves around or chooses to move throughout the city, they have an opportunity in a safe and convenient way to do so. And like I mentioned, we have identified policies, programs, and projects to be implemented in the next 2 to 3 decades. So this is a long-term plan. And there are many projects that have been identified throughout this planning process. The plan really took a 4-phase approach to develop these recommendations. We spent the first about 4 to 6 months of the project in what we called the discover phase. And that was really where the project team, including city staff and consulting team members, dug into the existing conditions and identified where our problems are in the city and what's most important to address. And we also did take a look at where the future trends and emerging technologies are leading us and conducted some analysis along those lines. We moved then into what we called the synthesize phase, where we took all of that information, worked with our city staff members and wider stakeholder groups to develop an overall vision for the city of Aurora, which you'll see a little bit later in the presentation. And building on that vision, identified 10 goals for the project with related objectives. And that really built on shared values that we heard throughout the process. In the synthesize phase, we also conducted what we called scenario planning, which was to imagine different futures for the city, which are kind of on these extremes, and test how those different futures might impact people's lives. Then we moved into the visualize phase, and that was really as we identified that preferred vision for the future of the city and that scenario. What is it going to take? What do the networks need to look like and the policies need to look like in order to reach that preferred vision for the future? And then finally, After we had those networks identified, we identified the policies, programs, and projects that would help us achieve that vision for the future. Here's the overall timeline. We won't dig into the details here, but we did kick off in late 2023. So it's been a little over 2 years now for this planning process to unfold. I just described the 4 phases. Those are depicted in the various colors here. One thing I want to highlight is we did have an engagement period for each of those 4 phases, where we took our results from our analysis and presented to the public and asked for their feedback throughout. And we do have the spring 2026 adoption of the final report. So a little bit about the overall engagement process here. One of the key aspects of this planning process was to not just track our results of our engagement, but also the process that went into it. So what you see on screen are all the various ways that we tried to engage with the community, similar to what Carly was talking about on the Colfax BRT project. We tried as many as we possibly could think of to reach as many people as we could throughout the city. From pop-up events and attending existing community events, hosting open houses, sometimes at libraries, other event locations throughout the city, some schools, hosting community roundtables here in this building, conducting virtual town halls online, so a live event where people could call in and listen to the project team and provide their feedback that way. I want to highlight the community planning charrette, which was a major milestone for our project, where we all got together with stakeholders and members of our community advisory group to develop that overall vision for the plan. And then we hosted several stakeholder meetings throughout the course of the project as well. On the right side of the screen, you can see the various notices and ways that we pushed information out to the community as well. So I mentioned the results here, touch points. So we had over 1 million touch points, what we call touch points, which is simply an instance of where somebody engaged with information about the plan. It doesn't necessarily mean that it was a direct conversation, but they saw something online and engaged with it there, or it was an interactive face-to-face conversation. We did have over 10,000 people visit the website throughout the last 2 years, and those folks filled out 2,500 surveys. Part of the surveys also asked for feedback on project maps and maps of the city, asking for folks to help us identify locations where they experienced problems in the transportation network. And we also hosted those open houses and virtual town halls and engaged with almost 600 people at existing community events. So phase 1 was that discover phase, and it resulted in the development of a state of the system report that really identified all of the key challenges that folks moving around the city experience. And one of the top outcomes of that state of the system report was the identification of safety challenges. Aurora has a large arterial network where people tend to drive fast, which often results in more severe crashes than where people are driving slow. So identifying those needs of how can we shift that driver behavior, what can we change about the way our streets are designed, and how the streets are laid out, and what kind of pattern they're laid out, can help to address those safety challenges. Another key challenge are mobility challenges. So people felt that access to jobs were limited by a lack of transportation choices, and that's backed up by the data that we were able to collect. Aurora is currently built in a more auto-centric infrastructure pattern, and that hampers bike, ped, and transit mobility. People do experience traffic bottlenecks throughout the city. Most people drive or carpool to work. It's more than 75% in all wards. And we have significant barriers that hamper movement for people walking and biking, many of which are rail, lines or major arterials that are hard to cross. Different demographic groups have higher propensity to use transit. So we see that that kind of shows up geographically in the city of Aurora, but a lot of that's driven by the different demographics that we see throughout the city. So our top transportation concerns, people feel it's unsafe to travel outside of a car. They experience safety concerns when they're moving around on foot or on bike or on transit. Bottlenecks and dangerous driving behaviors are a top concern. People felt that destinations generally in the city of Aurora are too far apart to reach comfortably by walking or biking, and there's a lack of connection to those services and destinations. There's a desire to have higher quality streets and places. So streets are one of our main public assets, and the design of those streets is important to how people feel about their community. And finally, transit is too slow, infrequent, unreliable, and feels safe. So a lot of transit problems, many of which can be addressed through projects like the Colfax BRT. Okay, so I touched on the vision and goals development. I'd like to read aloud the vision and mission statements that were developed as part of that process. The shared transportation vision for the city is that Aurora safely connects all people to our places for a healthy, sustainable, and economically strong community. The mission statement, so the vision is really that desired future for the city of Aurora. The mission statement is how are we going to get there? So the city of Aurora will provide a complete transportation system to meet the needs of all people. The city will engage the public in the delivery of plans, programs, policies, standards, and projects. And then on the right side of the screen, you see the 10 goals that we've developed. These really fit into 3 categories. The first 4 across the top, safe, reliable, convenient, and connected, really describe the overall transportation system itself and the network that we've developed. We want it to be safe and reliable. We want people to be well connected, and for those ways that they move around to be convenient. The next 3, sustainable, economically strong, and healthy, describe overall city aspirations, which the transportation system can help support. So we want our community to be sustainable, economically strong, and the last 3 describe how, sorry, blinked for a second. The last 3 describe how that system is built. So we want to help create authentic neighborhoods and places within our communities. We want to provide equitable options for people to move around and viable options for people to move around. And then finally, we want it to be well integrated with land use system. I mentioned the scenario planning earlier. So we tested 3 potential futures for the city of Aurora. These are really, we kind of thought of them as extreme possible futures. And the reason we do that is it helps us bookend what might happen. And some of this is within the city's control and some of it is just happening. You know, autonomous vehicles are happening. City doesn't have a lot of control over that right now, especially in the state of Colorado, given some of the laws on the books in Colorado. So some of that's just happening to the city, but a lot of it we can control through the choices that we make. Those 3 possible futures are somewhat depicted on this graphic. We identified a car-oriented city, which is kind of the status quo for Aurora, continuing to develop in the way that it has over the past 50 to 60 years. There's a transit-oriented city where we really concentrate new development on transit corridors and bump up our transit frequencies and provide a more well-connected transit system. And then finally, kind of middle ground here is a neighborhood-oriented city, which incorporates some aspects of that transit-oriented city, but maybe doesn't quite invest as much into the transit. Really focused on bike and walking connectivity in the neighborhood-oriented city, and really focused on providing town center type development where all of your services are nearby. So what did we hear from the public about those three futures? Well, we heard that there's a strong desire to change the status quo. There's a desire for the transit-oriented city and the neighborhood-oriented city. When we asked folks what they thought each of those different futures, how that might impact their quality of life, transit-oriented and neighborhood-oriented cities came out on top. All of that led to a fourth scenario, which we identified kind of taking aspects of each of the three, and we're calling it a place-oriented city. So the place-oriented city is our desired future. The place-oriented city increases the number of convenient, affordable, and safe mobility options, emphasizes the need to simultaneously concentrate the destinations within and near our homes and neighborhoods. It imagines investments in walking, biking, and transit infrastructure with a focus on making those modes of transportation more accessible and safer for everybody to use. And finally, the place-oriented city would use land efficiently and productively. Little depiction of what that place-oriented city might look like on the right. This is not in Colorado, mostly because we didn't want people to get too hung up on, I know that place. But what it depicts is that all those services are nearby. You can walk to most of those services. You might not walk to your job, but there will be transit that is nearby that can take you to your job. So in the next phase of the project, we used that model to help us develop the visionary network. On the right side of the screen, you see layered network. So, you know, we're on top of our land use, which is at the base map level. We lay our visionary street network on top of that. So we identified new arterials, widened arterials, where arterials that exist today might become collectors in the future. On top of that, we laid the visionary transit network, which expands the transit network significantly throughout the rest of the city, where it doesn't currently reach, with frequent service. We've also overlaid a visionary bike network, which you can see is also covering the entirety of the proposed developed area of the city. So everywhere around the city should have access to the bike network. Then finally, the visionary pedestrian network on top of that. Bit about each of those networks. So visionary pedestrian network, every city street must safely and comfortably accommodate pedestrian movement, particularly near schools, transit stops, and commercial areas. Kind of related to that Yale conversation we had earlier. Maybe there's an opportunity in the future to revisit that conversation. But this plan envisions that all these streets have pedestrian facilities. All the streets in Aurora have pedestrian facilities that are ADA compliant and useful to those people who live in those neighborhoods. The visionary bike network includes improvements such as separated bike lanes, shared use paths, and new crossings. This is intended to make biking safer and a more viable option for people no matter what their age. There's kind of this 8 to 80 concept in the bike planning world. If you're age 8 all the way to 80, you should have a biking option and it should be safe and comfortable for you to use it. That's why we have these kids on here. The visionary transit network prioritizes service expansion, higher frequency, infrastructure improvements where needed, as well as high capacity transit investments. All of that is intended to make transit a truly viable choice for people to move around for their daily needs. Potential improvements include bus-only lanes like Denver's putting in on the Colfax BRT project, enhanced station amenities, and really a focus on providing that more frequent service, because that's the key driver of ridership, higher ridership, is that more frequent service and makes it more convenient for people to use it. And finally, we did identify visionary auto and freight network, which is also an expansion of the current network. So Nicholas's presentation about all the street maintenance that he has to do Well, it's gonna get worse for him. I'm sorry, Nicholas.
Messing with his averages.
The network will expand. Aurora is continuing to expand, and the auto and freight network needs to expand with it. People will continue to drive in Aurora, and make that choice, in spite of, or, even in conjunction with all these other improvements. Driving will still be here with us. So, we need to make sure that we accommodate those choices as well. Okay, so realizing the vision, I mentioned the policies, programs, and capital investments. And then I want to highlight here, I haven't mentioned yet, partnerships. So all these projects are going to cost a lot of money, and we're going to need to fund them through active participation in partnerships throughout the region. So that's a key aspect of this plan, is highlighting where those partnerships are possible, and how we can pursue those partnerships to fund these improvements. Snapshot of the 5 new and updated policies. Talked a little bit about complete streets. So we are in the midst of developing the complete streets policy and design guidelines. That will be a deliverable of this project, that will follow behind the adoption of the plan. Another key policy is designing streets for safer speeds. So how does that design of our street encourage people to drive slower and at safer speeds? We will update our transportation impact study guidelines. That's Carly's job over the next few years, I think. And then another policy here is updating requirements for new and redevelopment. What infrastructure is going to be the responsibility of those developers? And then finally, a focus on high frequency transit corridor. 12 new and updated programs have been identified. On the left side, we're really focused on the multimodal walking and biking policies and programs. So expansion of the Safe Routes to School program, expansion of the neighborhood sidewalk retrofit program, excuse me. One thing I want to mention is this plan is really focused on collectors and arterials. And all of those neighborhood sidewalks that are too narrow or missing are not necessarily identified in this plan, but will be identified through that neighborhood sidewalk retrofit program. Pursuing bicycle-friendly city, urban area shared micro-mobility. So that's the scooters, e-scooters, e-bikes that you'll see. So pursuing some policies to regulate those. Transportation demand management is a program that we can use to encourage people to use other modes of transportation besides single occupancy vehicles. And then the city wants to keep track of its progress on multimodal through multimodal counts. So going and counting, having a programmatic approach to counting where we're seeing bicycles and pedestrians. On the right side, the first 3 are really focused on the bus and transit network, and improving that network. Highlight microtransit. Microtransit zones have been identified, which are shuttles to and from key destinations where fixed route transit does not currently serve. And then finally, on the bottom, want to highlight the maintenance program and continuing that resurfacing program and expanding that program as needed. So we have identified over 900 individual project elements. This is a quick snapshot of the project elements that were identified. Wide range of elements here, including over 100 new signals and roundabouts throughout the city, 300 miles of bikeways, 300 bike crossings, bike and ped crossings, 20 what we call multimodal transit corridors. So those are those complete street improvements where we want to focus on providing that great transit. And of course, we do have projects for street widening where needed, where those bottlenecks are occurring, and we see that capacity issue for people moving by car. Here are the maps. Don't try to read them, but one thing I do want to highlight is that most of these projects are in the currently developed area of the city. And that's because those are the streets that the city is currently responsible for. Many of the infrastructure improvements that will occur in developing areas of the city are going to be paid for and built by the developers that come into uh, those areas, per Carly's traffic impact
They are
guidelines.
failing at their role. Just to let you know.
Highlight of the short-term projects. So I mentioned the micro transit. We have several intersection upgrades, complete street projects throughout the city. So a few bikeway projects, closing some of these missing sidewalk gaps. And then we have several corridors that have been identified for safety and technology improvements. And you can see the total investment here is 45 million to 65 million for the next 10 years. And that note at the bottom, that does not include maintenance. So Nicholas's certificates of participation can't be used for this 45 to 65 million per year. So one of the key aspects here is how do we incorporate that into the Build Up Aurora program and move some of these important projects forward. Here's our plan adoption timeline. We do plan to submit the final plan to the TABS committee. So we will incorporate what we've heard from the public as comments to that plan and the planning commission next month. And then aiming to submit that to full city council in April. And we don't have a question for you all, but you probably have some for us.
Well, thank you for the presentation. So open up, questions, comments. Councilman Manager, okay, Mayor Pro Tem Coombs, you have a question?
Yes, so looking at the short-term projects, it looks like really the majority of those are road projects rather than bikeway, pedestrian or transit projects. And it seemed like the definition of roadway projects is primarily capacity projects. Is that correct?
I would say that's generally correct. I will say many of the roadway projects that are moving forward, I would put into that complete streets category because we are planning construction of adjacent sidewalks to go with those projects in many of those.
I think you want to
instances.
maybe, I don't know if we can go back.
Should I
I
go
have
back to the
I have a map on my screen that I can zoom in
Sorry,
on too,
it's
but
a little zoomed out, so it's hard to
Yeah.
tell what the projects are. And I guess the
Yeah.
other note there is that one of the main priorities from the public engagement was slowing down traffic. So is that part of these projects? Like, do they impact that slowing down traffic and safety of the road for other users?
I could jump in.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm very short, so I'm gonna talk. Cindy Collick, Deputy Director of Project Delivery, and Mayor Pro Tem, yes. So on the complete streets portion, we are actually looking at if you have to widen, we have a variety of areas where we only have a half a street built and no sidewalk or anything on the other side, no bike lanes. So the goal is to make that a complete street, which could be a function of both sidewalks adjacent on both sides, bikeway, parking. So those are the options that we're looking at on those projects that you're seeing, that yes, they are gonna make it better to travel each way along the roadway, but for all modes, not just for the vehicles, if that's helpful.
So they do or don't slow down traffic?
Should slow down traffic because you have narrower lanes to drive it, as long
Okay.
as people obey the rules.
I think each project, yeah, thank you, Cindy. Each project, the scope is a little different. I think when we looked, there are a lot of constraints with in the built out area of the city with like where our right of way is and how much width you have. I don't think in the core of the city we have any expansion for extra lane projects. I think the only one on here is Gun Club.
Yep.
So the
Okay.
other ones are all safety, widen sidewalk, and to widen that, you probably are gonna have to reduce lane widths, which to your point is going to improve, like make the speeds lower. We have different safety projects, I think like on Iliff and Mississippi. So when you're seeing all those orange lines, those are not like widening travel lanes on Mississippi or anything.
Yeah.
Okay, and sorry, just one
Yeah,
kind of
that's okay.
follow-up related to that. When we say complete streets and we're talking about like the bikeway portion of complete streets, are we including sharrows and like just single painted shoulders of roads in complete streets? Or are we talking about safe bikeway infrastructure.
Yeah.
I would add. I
Go
mean,
ahead, go
so
ahead.
Our goal is to put in like a separated type bikeway with a curb or something like that. There are some locations where we may not be able to do that because of right-of-way constraints, but the goal really is to repurpose that portion of the road so that it's safe for all modes, whether you're on a bike, and obviously a separated bikeway is safer than sharrows and paint.
Some of the projects have a shared use path where you maybe have an 8 foot or wider sidewalk and that's meant to be shared. But I've gotten a lot of negative feedback from our residents about sharrows and not thinking they help or knowing what they mean. So these are not sharrow projects. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Keith.
and I'll just add, I want to add a couple things. So,
Yeah.
For slowing vehicles down, a key outcome of this process is going to be that complete streets design guidelines, where we have identified updates that we want to include in the city's design standards. Most of those updates are focused on slowing down. Things like narrower traffic lanes that Cindy mentioned, reduced turning radius at intersections. So right now we have these big sweeping turns where people can turn really fast, tightening that up so that they have to slow down. There are many other traffic calming related improvements in those guidelines, but those are the two big ones. And then regarding the bike, so bikeway selection is really predicated on speed of the roadway, prevailing speed of the roadway, and the volume of traffic that we see on that road. And so that's kind of the spectrum. And the higher the speeds and the higher the volume, more separation and protection you need to provide for cyclists. So there are some roads where we have low volumes and low speeds, and maybe a painted bike lane is okay and comfortable. But it has to be really pretty slow and low volume for that to be the case. But that's not to say that we don't have some bikeways that are headed that way. But most of the bikeways provide some level of protection or at least those are the recommendations in the plan.
No, go ahead.
The images that were shown related to kind of neighborhood based or place based design seem to be gridded, like blocked streets. The vast majority of Aurora not gridded and blocked streets. So how are we looking to kind of navigate the connectivity on our loops and cul-de-sacs defined sort of roadway network? And what does the future development and roadway design moving forward look like in terms of addressing that cul-de-sac or gridded road?
Yeah, I'm glad you caught that. So generally, a grid system provides a greater level of connectivity, more options for people, more options for designers of the roadway network to provide bikeways that are not along arterials, for example, where people just generally aren't going to feel comfortable. So that is the desire moving forward for the city, is to provide more of a grid system. And you already see that in many of the newer developments that are coming online. Greater connectivity for pedestrians and bicyclists. Some of that might even take the form of where street connectivity doesn't go through in those areas, but pedestrian bicycle connectivity does. So that is more designed towards those newer developments. It is really hard to imagine many of our neighborhoods being retrofit in a way that brings that connectivity back. We have cul-de-sacs that have houses at the end of them, and we're not going to tear down a house to put a grid through. So much of this recommendation is predicated on, if an area does redevelop or develop, this is the pattern it should take. When that redevelopment occurs, these guidelines will steer us towards that grid development.
And if I may, Chair.
Yeah.
Gianina Rustad, Director of Planning and Business Development. parallel with this project, we are working on analyzing small lots and the zoning code with that. And a few of our guiding principles have been connectivity. As we are building smaller lots, more houses, we want to make sure whether you're, especially if you're walking or biking, you have the connectivity. That might be shorter block lengths, but also those cut throughs, whether it's bike pedestrian, and protecting the public realm. And we are looking at creative ways that currently aren't in code to allow for this, so.
Thanks, Eugene. Sorry for. No, don't apologize. If we could just take 6 more minutes, of the meeting, just so, you all know. Councilmember Hancock, did you have any questions or comments? Oh, I don't know if she's still on.
Yes.
Okay, she's not on. Alrighty. I do not have any questions or comments at this time. I really thank you guys for the work on this. I think these are beautiful maps. And and I'm not joking when I say that. It was really beautiful and really excited for this to come in front of the rest of city council in the coming months.
Thank you.
All right, yeah, thank you. Moving on to miscellaneous matters for consideration. There's a discussion, we are overlapping with another policy committee meeting at this time. So we need to change the dates, the date, the time. Do you all remember what we originally talked about when we checked in?
Sure, yeah, so, Kurt Millmeyer, Director of Public Works. So, unfortunately, we overlap, with management finance policy by about a half hour. So 2 options to consider would be keep it same day, move the meeting up so we could do it over the lunch hour from noon till 1:30, or potentially move it back to be, after 3 o'clock, after management finance is wrapped up. So it'd be 3 to 4:30. So those would be 2 options for the committee to consider.
Councilmember Andrews and Wiles.
For you.
For noon? Checking her work schedule.
Sorry, I'm like.
Well, Councilmember Wiles is taking her-
It's fine, I can,
noon?
yeah, that's fine, I can.
Oh, thank you, appreciate it. Yeah, let's stick with, we'll move it to, noon o'clock or 12 p.m. And our next meeting will be March 26th.
Thanks so much. We'll make that schedule adjustment.
Great. And then in the last, any anticipated topics for next meeting? Do I need to cover the
We
agenda?
have a very full agenda planned for next month as well. Some of the items on the list right now are the shared micro mobility program update. We have the Connecting Aurora adoption on the agenda for next month. Neighborhood traffic calming program update, which is a very important program that we have. We also have the first quarter capital projects update, which is, it's information only, but a good update of all the capital projects that are ongoing in the city. We have an IGA with Adams County for 38th Avenue that's on the agenda, and also another IGA with a metro district for parking and lighting. So very full agenda for next month.
Very full. All right. All right, sounds good. Does it make sense to switch it to 2 hours just in case, given I guess maybe we could talk about that.
We can also reduce the agenda. Some of these items are
Okay.
not time sensitive.
Okay.
Or, one other option is the consent
Mhm.
section of the agenda. We've traditionally not used that here, but we could put the IGAs on the consent agenda for the committee and hold the more formal presentations for some of these larger policy topics that we need you all to deliberate on. So that's also an option. I believe public safety uses the consent agenda, if I recall.
Yeah.
For reports and standardized information that comes to that committee. So that's also an option.
Let's use that option. at least
Okay,
For
try
next
it.
month.
Okay,
Yeah, we'll
great.
try it. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll put the IGAs.
Yep.
And obviously provide you guys sufficient backup. So if there's questions, you obviously can call those out and ask questions as part of the meeting and we'll be prepared to answer that. But we'll put those in consent and then allocate the sufficient time for the healthy topics to come before you at our next meeting.
I know the agenda's full, but council members, do you guys have any additional topics you'd like to discuss for next month? Alrighty. Well, is there anything from staff?
No, just a reminder about our Build Up Aurora meetings. We do have 2 transportation meetings this week, one tonight at Moorhead at 6, and then one on Thursday evening down at the Southeast Recreation Center at 6 o'clock. Tomorrow's library, arts and culture, and Saturday morning is public safety at the Central Library at 9:30. So full project week.
Thank you, Laura.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks, everyone. We will adjourn at 2:39. Giving you a minute back for